Hello, my name is Becca. I am a senior product designer for Threat Insights. And honestly, I wasn't really sure what to share today, but I decided to, rather than go in on one feature, kind of zoom out and look at what Threat Insights has been working on for the last 3 or so years and really look at the process we're taking and some of the roadblocks and ways that we're trying to improve some of those roadblocks. This is still very much like a work in progress. So I won't have all the answers right away, but we are starting to take some steps to address some of these issues. And I'm really curious to hear from other designers if you are in a similar situation, if you have any ideas. So zoomed out, basically, this is, I think, how we like to think of feature development. You have 12 milestones, right? You have a milestone for every month. So this is looking at a year of a roadmap for a group. And so you have the feature at the top, you have the MVC, which, is came from a technical discussion with engineering to talk about, what exactly is possible for a first iteration to get something valuable out the door. And then from there, anything that didn't make it into the MVC, we should have design iterations following up that MVC to get to more of like the vision state, right? Because a lot of our job, an important aspect of our job as designers is to push past what the current technical constraints are and to really think about what the vision is. And that vision is really influenced by like, what are the customers' jobs to be done? What problems are they trying to solve? And we don't always just want to be limited with what we can technically do today or in the next milestone. We want to really be aspirational and be aspirational for our customers and for the team. So these iterations are important. And I think like Justin, my manager, and we've been looking at, the product development flow. And I think that there's a general consensus that this is ideal, that you start with MVC and you go iteration by iteration until you get to this pretty finalized feature. However, it's a little bit more complicated than that in practice. So I'm going to share the roadmap in retrospective for Threat Insights starting February 2021 to present September 2024. This is not a full list of everything that we've worked on in Threat Insights. This is really looking at what feel to me like vision designs, especially that were done. I take that back. It's not all vision designs. It's solving a customer problem. And some of them are MVCs because it couldn't be broken down more. Or in the case of this advanced filtering epic, which I'll get into, we identified some MVCs and then follow-up iterations, but the follow-up iterations are just kind of sitting. And there's some technical blockers that have caused some of these things to sit for years in our case. And so, okay, let's get into this. So just an overview here of the product development flow, and this is linked for anybody that wants a refresher. It starts with the validation track and then goes into the build track. It's not that waterfall. There is some overlap and there's some, going back to validation. Maybe if it goes into build and I have a conversation with engineering and they say, we won't be able to do this exactly like, you want it at least not right away. So we can't achieve this design, you know, there's some constraint that we need to design around. And so it goes back to validation track. I do some design solution validation and then back to build. And so it's kind of a cycle, but it always starts with the validation track. And so with that in mind, I kind of broke this down so that the left side of this, the pink stickies, maybe I should have made them correspond with these colors, but the pink stickies are the designs, and the orange is engineering efforts. And then you'll see these red triangles, which are how I think of them are UX regressions. So there is part of this process, which I won't discuss, but just want to acknowledge, there's requirements gathering, problem validation, design explorations, more problem validation before we get to the design. I'm not going to go into that side of things right now. We're just looking at once we have a design handoff, what happens. So ideally there is, you know, an MVC design issue, and then after there's design explorations, there's discussion with engineering. Maybe this should be here, actually. I haven't run this by anybody until presenting right now, but there's discussion with engineering on technical feasibility between, you know, the design exploration and me sharing what I'm thinking for addressing the customer problem. And then there's the design issue for the MVC based on the understanding of what that technical feasibility is. And then I usually have a post MVC issue to kind of as a container for all of the things that I know we won't be able to achieve as part of MVC. So taking this advanced filtering on the vulnerability report as an example, we were able to get these things in MVC. So engineering was able to replace the button drop downs and move to a filtered search component. We were able to get multi-select in the filtered search component, something I've been wanting on the issues page for many years now, rather than having to go label equals. So I was big on that pain point, wanting to solve that. Show two identifiers before truncation rather than just one. So we were able to get some good things into the MVC. Everything else that I knew was going to solve a customer problem, I put into this post MVC design issue. So we don't lose those things. Those things are numerous. I thought it would be really valuable to have various operators. So when you are using the filter search component, you say, you know, identifier, operator, or sorry, shoot, I forget the name of the value, identifier, operator. No, value, operator, identifier. That's the order. And so the operator is the middle part where you say, right now we only have is one of, but we want to add is or is not to there. We needed an analyzer filter. So basically SAST is one scanner, but it's broken down by many analyzer types. And so customers want to be able to only view results from one analyzer, adding more filters, and then raw text search. So these things were proposed, I think this was roughly mid or early 2023. And this is kind of what's happened with these proposals so far. You know, we were able to get the MVC out. There was a UX regression because when we added filter by analyzer, we had to remove, for technical reasons, we had to remove the select all for scanner type. So now in order to get all of SAST, you need to select each SAST analyzer one by one. So that was something that we had to create as a follow-up issue. There's a lot of time in between when designs are complete and when engineering work starts is really what I want to highlight in this. And sometimes, I mean, you can see that some of these designs were complete in 2021. This vulnerability management policy is now being worked on 3 years later. I designed a couple of security dashboard widgets that haven't been prioritized. And then this is an indicator of where there's some kind of like big back-end technical blocker, because I guess we've run into a lot of scalability issues. Because of those scalability issues, everything that I'm working on is not necessarily a feature that's requested by the customer. And so I also have this blue epic or effort down here for backend improvements. One thing that we had to implement was fuzzy counts on the vulnerability report. So previously we were able to break down, you have 2,000 vulnerabilities or critical vulnerabilities at the group level. The data was just getting too big. And so the engineering team said we're going to have to fuzzy these unless it's in an export. And so right now on the vulnerability report, it will just say 1,000 plus, but we can't show anything above that. And so, it's UX regression, because if I'm a application security engineering team lead, and my team went from 5,000 critical vulnerabilities down to 2,000, that's huge progress that I can't track in the UI because I just see 1,000 plus. So I'd have to do an export, and the export is a JSON format, and I need to clean that up and make it readable. And so there are some things that it feels like UX regressions. And same thing with, we're now introducing retention policies where we are saying we can retain vulnerabilities, but if they're dismissed or no longer detected, then we're going to archive them. So I'm working on designs for archives right now, and then those archives could potentially be deleted after a couple of years. And there's a lot of design considerations in the UI that come with that. So this is kind of an overview of what I've been experiencing in Threat Insights. Like I said at the start, I mean, there's a lot of things, smaller things that we've been working on that don't make it into this this roadmap. So I'm just highlighting the UX point of view of, the frustration of designing something, having it sit unprioritized. Of course, AI has come up, and that's been interesting. I think part of the reason that some of these things have sat for so long is because we had engineers pulled off of some of these other efforts to dedicate to AI. So Threat Insights now has like a dedicated AI engineering team. And you can see it's a very different process when it comes to AI. The pink stickies for design and the orange stickies for engineering are a lot closer together. We move a lot more rapidly in our iterations and MVCs within AI. So that's a very different process because of the prioritization and importance put on AI, but it's also created kind of this immense backlog for these other features. And so let me get into, I know I included a link. I don't think I included links to all of these issues. I can definitely do that. But where I have housed all of these, basically, this has been sitting all of these like issues that are just kind of like sitting. I started this issue back in January 2023 once I realized that this was happening. Threat Insights design issues awaiting dev, and I've been maintaining this ever since. The Threat Insights priorities list here is something that I keep checking. I've checked when it was 16.x, and then we updated it to 17.x, and so this is a really awesome resource to have. But I can see that some of these things that were a priority to design at the time got shifted around. There were some team changes, there were people that moved different teams or left the company, and so it's been a challenge to try to balance all of the new things that have come up, like AI, with the things that I've designed that have just sat for a while. And so yeah, I try to maintain this issue. And so they're all linked in here. But my question for everybody is, how do I avoid this? If you've experienced the same thing, I have some ideas. So just to cover the problems here.
Until
Sorry? Maybe Paul, you're meant to be muted. So one of the problems is it's discouraging when it takes over a year for even an MVC to be implemented. So one of the solutions that we're trying out is an engineering design pair pilot. And so this will hopefully help us scope the MVC more realistically. And so I don't propose anything that's just too visionary and just sits because engineering looks at it and says, that's not going to happen anytime soon. And so I am starting to work more closely with engineering at those early stages of requirements gathering, and making sure that we're very aligned within me creating the MVC. I don't want that to hinder. We're all on the same page that shouldn't hinder where I want to take something. So vision designs are great and encouraged, but at least getting a more realistic MVC out is the way to go, and it will avoid frustration on the design and the engineering side. I've also started chats with engineering managers to figure out why we've been so stuck and what we can do to get unstuck moving forward. Another problem I've been experiencing is a lot of context switching, especially in secure and govern, where there are multiple PMs to support. Threat Insights is the stage that I'm dedicated to, but essentially all of the groups in secure and govern kind of feed into Threat Insights. And so if another product manager has a feature that is really important for them to implement, it's going to show up on the vulnerability report. It's going to show up maybe on the security dashboard. And in the MR, in the security widget. So there's a lot of things to juggle coming from multiple groups across these two stages. And so even within Threat Insights, there's a lot of context switching. So I'm thinking maybe try to scope related work within one milestone, if possible. I should also mention here that a lot of these PMs don't have dedicated designers. And so there's 3 designers within secure and govern. And so we sometimes have to support multiple product managers. So yeah, if maybe I can try to scope it so I can work on things that are related, so there's not so much context switching, because my pings are kind of like having to reset like which workflow we're in and which part of the page we're in. Also, I started, I said that. Why is that repeated? That was supposed to be something different. Let's ignore that. And then UX regressions. I'm not sure how to fix this one yet. This kind of ties back to how I've started chats with engineering managers to figure out why we've been so stuck. maybe continued backend improvements, maybe more headcount on the engineering side. I'm not sure. But it seems like we just still have a lot of technical backend challenges, and users want things done at the group or higher organization level. But we tend to ship things, especially MVCs at the project level, because from a database performance perspective, it's just more realistic. But it's essentially not giving users what they want, because scalability is really an issue when it comes to vulnerability management, and they want to do things at that higher level, but they can't because we're blocked on a back end. And then the last problem is needing to maintain a backlog UX issue. So I started a vision design encompassing all backlogged and upcoming UX to communicate a North Star to the team. So I hope this will align us towards like where we're going more cohesively. It's also a good gut check for me when I'm just designing little features here and there. I want to make sure they all come together in a cohesive way. So I've started putting them all together. I was going to share that as part of this this call, but I'll have to do it in a follow-up because I ran out of time there. And then balance of breadth, many features versus depth, completing vision design of one feature. This is something Justin and I have been talking a lot about. You know, do we focus on the depth of one issue and seeing that, sorry, of one feature and seeing that vision come to fruition as fast as possible? Or do we balance, you know, getting out the breadth of getting out MVCs or multiple iterations across features? Because this iteration here may be not as important as this iteration here, or, you know, this MVC here. So how do we balance that where like maybe this comes after this? You know what I'm saying? So I would love more thoughts on that. If anybody has yeah, any experience with that. So discussion items, and I know we're pretty much out of time now, but maybe we can do this async. How does your team balance breadth versus depth of features? And who else can relate to any of these problems? What are some solutions you've tried, are trying, or plan on trying? That was a lot. I think there's some comments in chat.
Yeah, there are a number of questions inside of the agenda. I'd encourage everyone to chime in, especially Angela's question about how atypical this is. I know from my experience, Becca, you are not the only one facing these challenges. So it would be great to hear from everyone else.